Hello, everyone. So today I'm doing our very first podcast for Jivamukti. And so I'm Shae, and I have my beautiful friend Tammy here, which I'm so excited because we just figured out that we've never thought to actually hop on Zoom and see each other. So we were so excited to see each other's face. And yes, and so this is the very first of the podcast series. And we have no plan about today of where it's going to go, but Tammy and I always have lots to talk about. And so we'll see what comes up today.
That sounds amazing. It is so good to be here with you, Shay. I still can't believe we've never chatted face to face in I think the 5 years since we last saw each other in person. It's amazing to be here. I was so excited when you came to a few of us with this idea of starting a podcast where we might just be able to share ideas and some of the stuff that we do in hopes of getting more and more people to start sharing all of the gifts they bring to the world. So this is amazing. What an honor to be here as your first guest. Thank you so much. And yeah, so I don't think we mentioned even the name of the podcast yet. So I wanted to just ask you a little bit about how you came up with the name and even the idea for having a podcast like this.
Thanks, Tammy. Yeah, so it was probably about 10 years ago that I had this um, dream slash, yeah, it was like a lucid dream. And so in this setting, there was like people from all over the world, like all different races of people, and everyone was in this sort of big auditorium. It was more like I guess it was more like an outdoor area, like a football field or a couple of football fields where with so many people, and they were all starting to. It was starting to get a little bit chaotic and almost starting to break out into this not quite violence, but it was definitely getting starting to get rowdy. And then my brother Josh came into the dream and he whispered in my ear the word Jivamukti and he said, say that word to everyone. And I didn't actually know what that word meant back then. And so I said it, but I said it like at a normal tone and but out of telepathy it sort of got spread around and I could see as that word was hitting people's like they were receiving that word and that sound, they were all stopping. So whoever was starting to get really rowdy or yeah, they would almost stop in their tracks and then they would just have this love. And then it would almost be like they'd turn to the person they were about to sort of break out in a fight with, and instead it would just be like love in their eyes. And it sort of spread the whole way through this football field of people from all different races and cultures and then everyone by the end of it, everyone was just love with each other. And it's like the chaos and the rowdiness that it of the energy that it began had totally transformed, and there was no sign of that anymore. And I woke up the next morning going, I don't even know what that word means. And then I think it was maybe like 2 years later or something like that, where there's a brand of kombucha and it's called Jiva and it's my favorite one. And I was like, oh, and I really had just like let that word, like many times with me, I don't sometimes go searching. Sometimes I do if I'm really curious, but sometimes I just wait for something to come to me, especially in dreams. It seems to be the biggest way I receive messages and then let it land however it's supposed to with me. So that's how the word of this podcast came. I didn't give it much thought other than that. And then the reason for the podcast was because I had a reading with a medium a couple of weeks ago. She came highly recommended. And yeah, and as soon as I also had the reading with her via Zoom, and she channeled dad straight away because my dad passed away last year. And he came straight in and he said, you need to start running a podcast. And you know that the people that you voice drop every day or the people that are in your immediate environment are the the ones that you want to run this with already. So you've already got so much support of the people that you should be running a podcast with. And then I was like, oh yeah, after that I was like, oh yeah, I do. I literally love my people that I tell everything to, which is you guys, like you and my brothers and sisters and Courtney and Lara, who will also feature on here at some point. And so then I just was like, okay, well, Dad told me to, so I'm starting. And that was the name. And Jivamukti was the name.
So it's almost like we've been doing a podcast for the past few years just without recording it. It's kind of like now it's time to try to share some of what and it's not like what we know and what we have to offer, but really the questions that we're always asking. I find that in our dialogues, we have so many questions and they kind of change and evolve as we evolve in our work. And so it's such an interesting opportunity for us to reach out with those questions in hopes of even kind of creating this field where we're exploring these things and sharing wisdom. So I love that. And so what exactly does Jivamukti mean?
Well, I actually don't know still, but I think I searched it when I was trying to yeah, and it means something really, really beautiful. Hang on, I'm gonna see if I can find um where I tried to look it up because I had a yeah, so the Jivamukti has completed the majority of their karmic cycle over many incarnations, and their samskaras have been burnt away through lifetimes of spiritual practice, service, and surrender. The remaining karma is now only what is needed to wind down the current incarnation. Once the body falls away, there is no compulsion anymore to reincarnate. If someone reaches a state of Jivamukti, it's often seen as the final human incarnation unless they choose to return as a bodhisattva and help others awaken. A Jiva Mukti isn't withdrawing from the world. They can be fully engaged in the relationship, creativity, beauty, and worldly life. The difference is that they see everything as a divine play of Shakti. There is no separation between the sacred and the mundane. Oh, that makes me cry.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Ancient texts also suggest that a Jiva Mukti's energy body will shift and especially to the heart center, so that love flows now without fear or without clinging.
Oh, this is literally the perfect name for this podcast. And that really is something we've been talking a lot about lately, I feel like, especially as we're talking about the new earth and the great change and the shift and how it really feels like in order it's not like it's somewhere we're going, but it's this woven into the experience of inviting in this new earth, which is already here. It involves this purging of all of these karmic imprints, and so that really echoes with this idea of the final incarnation of the shedding of all of these karmic imprints and coming into a place like I can see the tears in your eyes, and it's like a place where we are no longer burdened by everything that that has been burdening us. And there, to me, it's like this word freedom, and of course, like liberation and freedom from all of our imprints and woundings. And I feel like that's a really big word for both of us, would you say?
Yes.
And I know we've talked about freedom a lot, but I'm curious kind of from this perspective also of the work that you do and like the gene keys and this imprint of freedom within you. Like, do you want to talk maybe a little bit about this concept of freedom and the personal meaning it has for you?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you know what's beautiful is that I hadn't actually looked up Jivamukti, like I had, and then I forgot. Like I said before, we pressed record when we were just chatting, and I said, like for both of us, we don't plan anything. We just sort of always say a prayer and hope that, this is received as sort of like a clear channel, the same way that we are when we're giving Reiki or something. And I love that I'd forgot what that word meant. And then when I reread it, I was like, it made me cry as well. I was like, oh my God. Um, yeah, so with the purification, so what I always understood with this new earth as well. So um in in the prophecy, of course, people that have actually looked into the gene keys and Ra and also human design through Ra's So when Ra received the voice, which was an entity that he called the voice, and Ra since passed in 2011. But he got shown that the epoch that we would be coming into, the next cycle, the mini cycle, the 400-year cycle within the epoch that's within the Yuga, that's within. So there's so many cycles now that have we always have these astrological cycles that are going on, but never before have all of the mini and macro cycles that are up to 200,000 years all ended sort of at the one point in time, which has been sort of going from 1987 was the first sort of harmonic upgrade, and then the process is sort of moving through this period until 2027. And then in 2027, the new incarnation cross that's taking over, and that's just one of the mini cycles, which is a 400-year new cycle, is the rising of the sleeping phoenix. Because we're moving through gate 55 for humanity, because gate 55 is Beatrice, our teacher, and I's life's work, because we're in that point between we're 1 degree Pisces, so in astrology, so we're sort of at the edge of Aquarius and Pisces, which is where we are now as a collective age. And so through that gene key is for everyone. It's not just for people that have that in their astrological blueprint. It's the whole of humanity is moving through this cycle, and that gene key moves from the shadow of victimization into freedom. And it's the only one out of the 64 that the gift word is freedom, and the city is also freedom.
Okay, so each gene key has like a path from like the lower vibration state to the higher. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and in the gene keys, as a guide, we're sort of taught that when we're sort of presenting the gene keys to a person so that they can start to contemplate their own journey of their gene keys, when we get to the shadow of all of the 64 gene keys, so all of us have a shadow state, and the shadow state's never supposed to be explored upon as being like something bad, because in many ways the shadow states were sort of states of safety in a way through the last epoch. So whilst we were in more of the ignorance that we all chose to go on for humanity, for our exploration throughout the multiverse, whilst we were on ignorance during earthly incarnations, and I mean, we can look at that in many ways, because I know my conversations can always go way big picture, but even with Greg Braden's work, like when he talks about the phase of ignorance, he might even say the last 200,000 years, because he will say that we were operating only off 2-strand DNA rather than our full 12-strand. But then we can look at more like just the last Yuga as the ignorance epoch, and that might be like more a 26,000 year cycle. Or then we might even look at the real point of ignorance was when we went into the patriarchal last phase of this cycle, which is like the last 6,000 years. So however we're looking at it, when we went through more of the ignorance phase, the shadows of all the 64 gene keys were in some ways, as a collective, we all sort of operated mostly from our shadow states, because it wasn't so safe to be in the gift. Like, and so the people that we would know of, say Jesus, or to act from the gift point, then ahead of the collective, you would sort of almost have your head on the chopping block type thing. And so the shadow states were never supposed to be looked at as something that's bad, but rather just to have the curiosity around looking at the shadow states of our main blueprint, and just to start to bring softness and awareness and curiosity to those shadow aspects of ourselves, and start to see that yeah, not only were they a point of safety in some ways, in many regards, but they're not all that we are. And so it's the beautiful part about it to come in from there, is to see that the gifts is where our real potential is. So in our dormant DNA, and we've been sitting like that's all this junk DNA has been teeming with all of our soul memory from incarnations on Earth and incarnations on any other dimension that we've incarnated on. And yes, we've had our traumas, and but we've also had an enormous amount of gifts that we've already got inside of ourselves, and these are starting to recalibrate now. So then when we come through the gene keys lens, we can look at the gifts of each of our in our blueprint and go, wow, that's who I really am. And the shadows are also part of it, but the gifts are, this is what I am.
I
And
just
it's, yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, and I want that to continue. But as you're speaking, this whole visual just came to me that it was just so cool because so we're talking about the cycles and whichever cycle and how long it goes. But I was picturing this descent, right? And it's all cycles, so it goes up and down, and it's never going in a circle, it's going in a spiral, and we're always evolving. But in these descent periods, it's almost like because there are these cycles, we can see it as kind of part of the divine plan, and rather than judge it or condemn it. And what I'm seeing is like literally these beings going down into this like mine, like going down through this mine shaft and into a mine, and they're mining for coal. And like the coal is the shadows, and it's like it's not that we are stuck in the shadows or that they are bad. We are mining them, and then and because it's that time of the cycle where there's a necessity to confront them and reckon with them and heal them. And so I'm kind of seeing these coals with these little sparkles of like the gold or the diamond
Yeah.
inside. And that's the gift. And as we don't turn our backs to them or just give up because it's so heavy to do the mining, or I don't know exactly how mining works, but then we kind of excavate and then the gifts. So please continue with the gifts, but you know what I mean?
Yes, and actually that's really beautiful because in so Richard Rudd, when he was seeing the cycles himself, it was because he'd studied with Sri Yukteswar. So Sri Yukteswar, he's the one that talked about the cycles of the yugas coming from like when we were just come out of pure source, and we were in the gold, and then we first went in the golden era, and then when we were in the golden era, we didn't even have a form, and then we went down into the silver era, and I think then at the end of the silver era, we start to go more into like we start to become more like the elementals. So we might be like the fairies and in the David Kingdom and things like that. And then we keep going, we mine. And then I think the Kali Yuga was like the iron. So it's like it is going right down into that coal. Yeah.
The depths of the blackest coals that exist. Yeah.
And now we spiral. So as far as I know, the descent of what Sri Yukteswar believe, his work was like the descent down would take a long time for humanity. Like that descent down into the Iron Age would be a long time, but the ascent after the edge of the Kali Yuga, which is now, would start to spiral up quite a lot faster in the ascent back to the golden era. And that would be because there would be a turning point of remembering, and that's now, and remembering that we were always a spiritual being, and when we forgot so much, we forgot that and went more into the material, only connecting more to our material selves on earth, and we forgot who we really are. That was when we were in the ignorance. And now remember as we remember all of these gifts coming back on, they actually activate quite quickly. And but first, as you said, there needed to be a great purification. And so in the unraveling of moving into the new earth, there first needed to be Richard does do a fair bit of work on the codon rings, but there needed to be all the ring of purification. And so some of the gene keys are really connected to that process of purification. They're all part of the Kali Godhead as well, because we needed to purify our karma as a collective. And yeah, and I think in your book, this is a nice time actually to come to your book. This book is so beautiful. I don't know if when we release this podcast, I don't know if we're going to have the video or just the audio. So I don't know if people will be able to see this, but I'm just going to put it up anyway. And my little puppy Daisy's eaten a little bit of the corner.
Which I love.
She wanted a little bit of it, a taste of this as well.
Who doesn't want to bite out of this book?
So Tammy's book is You Are So Much More Than You Think You Are, A Higher Perspective on You, the Greatest Story Ever Told. So Tammy Stone. And I'm going to ask you about this book. I've read it. I must say, for me personally, when I'm reading it, because I know you, it just was like, oh, magic, such an honor, like, because yeah, because I know you, and I was not only then connecting, like if you read a magical book, something that's so special, you almost, because you do start to know the author in a way, or you start to make up an idea of who they are in their personal life, or you sort of go on that magical journey with the author. But because I knew you, it was even more like magical because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of my friend. It's such a good book. And I think in this book, the biggest thing that I guess, yeah, that I realized whilst I was reading it is that all the questions, like you said, we are very curious beings, and we always, I don't know if it's like seeking, if that's what you would say, we're always seeking the remembering, but that book really addresses pretty much everything I can think of that we start to ask in our journey. And I'm sure we'll keep asking more questions as we evolve, Tammy, but really you've gone in and you've explored a lot of the questions that people sort of that come up when people are on that journey of awakening.
Oh, first of all, thank you so much for that introduction to the book. And we did want to get back also. I wanted to get back to the gene keys because we were talking about the 55 and how there's two freedoms in there in that 55th. So I want to get back to that too. But thank you so much for that. And yeah, and I honestly can't take the credit for the everythingness that's kind of in the book. And I deliberately didn't want to go down too deeply into one portal of exploration or another because I can do that and too much so maybe sometimes. And I really genuinely wanted this to be a guide of some kind for people because as you said we are collectively entering this period of remembering now, and to whatever degree of consciousness about that, but it is happening for everyone. And so I do a lot of energy work, but it's specifically and a lot lately I've been doing Akashic records readings, and it's just uncanny how many people come with, you would think just based on like who we're doing readings for, and I'm sure it's the same with you and your clients, you would think that almost like that literally everyone is kind of starting to wonder who really are we and what are we doing here, and there really literally must be more like the than like the title says. And I know that people who are coming for readings and experiences like this are already thinking in a certain way. But I've just been astonished time and time and time again by the beauty of the, I guess, like sincerity of the questioning that people have. And so the ideas for what to explore in this book really come directly from the questions that clients come, with, and that they would love to hear from their guides and from the light beings and the divine beings, what kind of perspective there might be on their lives that they're kind of not experiencing because they're feeling stuck in some way, and who isn't, including you and I'm sure. So it has been like a tremendous, more of an honor than I can even say. Like from the minute you and I met our teacher Beatrix, and Pancho too, of course, to start to, maybe not start, but to at least really accelerate our understanding of the need to be in the heart space as our way of truly connecting to what matters. Um, and I guess like one thing I really wanted to say about this too is how many people come for readings, or just anyone that I might be talking to who's kind of on a spiritual path, And kind of the first thing that they ask, or at least it's what's behind the questions they're asking, is like, am I on the right path? And there's this feeling of fear and doubt behind it, that maybe I'm not, or I'm doing something wrong, or I'm failing at the path of life. And without fail, you go into their records, or you tune in, or you just dive right into the heart space, and you get this utter feeling of perfection and beauty of the soul in any single moment, in any state that is in existence. And it is so overwhelmingly loving that whatever actually comes through in words or guidance, it's that energetic frequency of love um that is being shared with the client, and you can see the lightening of this burden, like in the mind, like the coal mine, and just this lightening. And with things lightening up, and you're getting this expansion of the heart space. And when you have an expansion of the heart space, you also start to get clarity. And so once all of that starts to gel and to come together, then there's this glimmer of, oh, I can do this too. Like, we're all channels for light and love frequencies. And so I, more than anything, I just wanted that idea that we're already perfect on the soul level. As our teacher Beatrix says, our blueprint is perfect. And it's not a cliche, it is not optimism. We literally come into this human experience to, first of all, have some challenges to help us grow and to be on our journey, but specifically to come to remember that there is a perfection that is the driving force between of our experience. And I'm sure you can relate to all of this from your client experiences too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like even with the past life regression, like the soul journeys that I do as well, when someone's lying, I actually have the grid set up because I'll have someone later today. It's the morning for me and it's the night for Tammy. But I will have someone later today. He's been coming in person. Um, because sometimes I do these journeys with Lara, who will hop on the podcast at some stage as well, and we do it via distance. Which is actually really also really effective. It's just a different thing. But I do have someone coming in person today, and when I get them to that point where their team come in, I always am sitting over in the corner of my little caravan that's set up here, and I'm always crying. And I'm because I can feel where they're at, um, and it's back into that all my like that overarching love that I always just love it because I will just sit on the edge here and sometimes the words won't come to me. I'll be choking because I'll just be crying as I feel where they're at. And yeah, and it is like it's like you said, it's our blueprint is perfect, our oversoul, our everything is perfect. And our incarnating soul, like even though we don't see it as perfect sometimes because our the little aspect of our incarnating soul has its yeah has sometimes its trauma and sometimes it's things that it's actually agreed to work on in this incarnation, and it feels sometimes messy and sometimes we go into that forgetting. But when we have those moments of really connecting back to our heart in those places, especially when we're holding space for someone and we're so in that space to hold for other people as well, um, there's just no doubt about that level of love and perfection. And I think coming back to the Gene Keys difference now between the gift and the city of freedom, this might be a nice point to join this because I this yeah, it's Richard Rudd is his work on the Gene Keys, but it wasn't. But I didn't really get this answer directly through the Gene Keys. It was actually Beatrice again. I asked her at some point. I said to her, um, like this Gene Key that has the gift of love and then the city of love, like I don't know where the difference is there in because the both words are freedom. And oh, this will make me cry too. But she said, at the gift level, we're still a little bit remembering that human level of freedom. So I think I want to say it how she said it, but at the gift level, because the gifts of all of the gene keys of all of the 64 fractals, the gifts the gifts have this highest beautiful part, but they still have our humanness in there. So they still have that part of ourselves that, yeah, that can sometimes feel the messiness, but it's not like the shadow. It's the humanness starting to flower, like starting to really flower and remember. But the Siddhic level, which is the highest expression, um, this is sort of like our avatar selves or our God. This is our perfection and the overall perfection. And so for the two levels of freedom, she said, for the Siddhic level, it's where you don't take anything personal. Um, and so you're free. So everything that we encounter when we incarnate and we have some things that are challenging, or we have some things that bring us to our knees and they're hard and they make us cry and they make us sometimes feel traumatized and they make us all the things, and bring us to our knees. At that point, if we take them personal though, and we think that they're personally happening to us, then we've missed the freedom. Because at the Siddhic level, it's an honor to have incarnated into the form, and nothing of those traumas are personal. Like none of them were ever personal. And if we take them personal, then we go back into that victim space. Whereas,
That's so interesting. Right. Like it almost, the way that I'm hearing that is almost like when we're in the victim state, of course, something is happening to me. This is happening to me. So then when we kind of work on that and start to heal that, and we start to feel this taste of freedom from the victim state, but it's still, because we're still in that human realm, it's like freedom from, right? So it's freedom from this relationship because now I'm here, or freedom from this entrapment situation that I've been in with work, or so it's still connected. It's a feeling of freedom where you're not taking things as personally, but it's still connected to what is personal, right? And then we get to this Siddhic level and it's like there's just, it's almost nameless. It's like this freedom, just like love is not conditioned, this freedom isn't conditioned on anything in this material realm or these experiences that we have. Is that right?
yeah, and so Richard does say as well, it's like freedom from the suffering. And so I think, yeah, at that human level, like you said, yes, like at that human level, it's like we feel free from a period of suffering. So we might label it in our humanness and go, I'm in struggle right now. And if this part of my life become better, then I would be free, and I would be free from the suffering that I'm experiencing because of this thing. So it's always putting a blame or a level of blame on something that's causing suffering. And at the Siddhic level, that dissolves. Like you said, it's nameless because it is that perfection. So there's nothing to have been, to experience that polarity from. Yeah.
It's fascinating. And I'm trying to connect that to, I guess, like healing, which is, of course, the path of enlightenment is healing. And that's a word I talk a lot about in the book, but it kind of, I was inspired to write a lot about that because just like people ask, am I on the right path? There's always this kind of assumption like there's something I need to heal, like there's something wrong with me. And so it's the same thing, like this freedom from our issues is different than what, like just freedom, like this sigh of relief. And it's the same with healing, where we're not healing from our karmic imprints or our wounds, but as a result of the process that we're in, those will inevitably slowly start to and gently start to fall away. And then so we're left with this, yeah, this, I don't know, I'm saying it's just this amorphous, beautiful, shapeless feeling, and which I connect to surrender, like this radical, acceptance, like when we're in the coal mine, like here we are in the shadows, and this is where we are. So if this is where we are and this is the only place to be, then there's actually no more suffering anymore. Now, that's not liberation, but this acceptance of whatever state we're in the most beautiful necessary step, because we can carry that with us every step of the way. And as things start to come up for exploration and for healing, we're not taking it as personally anymore, even though there's still that tethering to it until we're completely free, I guess. And I don't know, for me personally, surrender has been very difficult, like throughout the process of life, and maybe for all of us. But it is such a feeling of hard-won victory to realize, I don't have to control I literally can't, but also I don't have to be in charge of everything that happens. I just have to let it happen and then watch how I'm kind of breathing among the situation. If that does that make sense?
Yeah, so much. Yeah, and in the 55th Gene Key as well, he will say about like the most terrifying. I think it came from Rilke. It came from a poet, probably Rilke, but it says the most terrifying thing to I mean to the human ego is an angel, because an angel has no anything, has no seemingly it has no identity, it has no friends, it has no name, it has no and so for the ego, that is the most terrifying thing, but it is the point of freedom that um yeah, that we're all really seeking. And I think that's really like we know our souls know like yeah, it's so funny because it's always happening. Like our souls know that it's seeking that only, and that's the only prize. And then the ego gets terrified at that. So it's always that the ego then thinks it's not going to exist. Because like you said, at the point of the angel, then you don't know that you exist. There's no point of reference then that you even exist. So the ego wants to know it exists, and the best way to know it exists is to give it a drama. And so he does talk about that 55th gene key through wanting a drama, which causes more suffering in the victim space, because the drama gives it that point of reference that it exists.
Hmm. Where do you think we're at now with this 55th gene key, because it's connected to what we're going through now collectively? Where are we collectively in that journey from the shadow to the gift to the city in terms of the gene key of freedom and in relation to the great change that we're in the middle of right now?
Yeah, so he will so in the prophecy from Ra, he sort of said that 2027 will mark February 2027 will mark the beginning of the birth of the rave children. And so this is only I think this is only a small percentage of children that so it's not all children from 2027, but some of the children that come through will carry full crystalline DNA. And so as far as that story, I think goes, whilst we've been in the ignorance and the four, we've also been in carbon-based DNA. And so as a human with carbon-based DNA, carbon holds karma, and it holds collective karma, it holds individual karma until the time of great purification is amongst us, which is now, where we're starting to really rapidly burn through the fires of Kali, and the fires of purification mean that we are burning away a lot of that karma. And that when we get to a point in the collective, which I guess is what the question is, I guess we've got to get to that percentage, whatever that magical number percentage is, where there's been enough purification of karma that the slate now is starting to clear. So then it makes room for the birth of these children that are carrying full crystalline, and the ones of us that are older that have just gone through that process. We sort of had to do it within ourselves, so we had to go in and pure like and do this transformation from carbon to crystalline, through a process whilst we're still in our body. But the rave children will come through, won't be carrying carbon-based DNA. So I guess that means they just don't hold on to the trauma and the karma or the victim story the same as what we have had to, well, while we've incarnated earlier. Um, and I don't, yeah, I guess there's some sort of marker reference of 2027 marking a point because it's the final harmonic convergence. And so there is some harmonic calibration that's happening because for those children to have come through in the first place, it meant that the ones of us that have been here on Earth during this process have cleared enough purification of collective karma to make way for that to have for those children to be born
What
during
a
that time.
fascinating time we're in. I'm imagining these children coming in, and I think they already have started and they're going to continue to come in at whatever stage, but definitely at a different frequency and vibration than us and those before us and so on. But and I feel like once like you said we reach this kind of tipping point, it is going to accelerate and accelerate really quickly. But until then, we're in this kind of like, I shouldn't be so visual with my hands because we might not be showing this, but we're in this kind of like shaking and like glitches of this matrix and everything, and it's a bit difficult. But these children coming in, I would imagine that a lot of them are coming into and being birthed by parents who are still more carbon based. So there's this um it's an interesting time for that, for that kind of discrepancy. And how I'm thinking about that is this beautiful time. It almost feels like the this carbon versus crystalline and this kind of gap between the generations is, I just thought of this now for the first time, and it's like it's creating an opportunity for us to gather and to move away from this nuclear family concept, or not totally moving away from it, but to encourage this age of Aquarius, this community living, this communal living in community, whereby we have elders who are potentially having done some of this purification at different rates, and who can help to recognize and to understand and meet these children where they're at, and help to bridge, uh, to help their parents, become bridges between their children and the elders. So it's something very interesting, because before long, everyone's going to be at this more crystalline state. But this period between, which is really the period we are in now and might well be for the rest of this lifetime, it's something to really honor, I feel, because it's so difficult and it's so chaotic. But it's like that coal with the specks of gold. It's like there are so many opportunities to see what is going on and how are we going to change this, and how are we going to be more creative in looking for the resources we have in the eldership, in different cultures that we may not be aware of, to help us to bridge the way forward. And I feel like we're talking about how do we recognize this shift and where we're at. And for me and maybe my clients especially, I'm feeling like people are exhausted, and that could be the first sign of being willing to surrender and to let go of so much of what they're holding on to. And they're not exhausted in terms of I give up. They're exhausted, and then they book an Akashic Records reading or past life regression reading. And they, at least in my experiences, I feel like it doesn't take very much for them to just light up and to recognize, yes, I always have had this gift, or I've always been drawn to this. Why? And then they get some context, and then off they go. And they're so excited to be exploring these gifts within themselves. So this exhaustion is such a beautiful platform from which we can start to leap. Are you feeling that too with your work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think a few things come to mind too, like because like you said, I guess when we were coming back to like the feeling of am I failing, or like clients coming, am I failing or am I getting this right? It's always just based on a little bit on society's like perception at that point in time of their of what the belief systems are around there. And even trauma is so relative to like um that fear of failure, that you're getting something wrong. So when it comes down to, and the shifts, like you said, the shifts in clients are so fast because all you need to really do is give them that experience of that perfection, and also give them that reassurance that an old an old world paradigm of failure might be because we were in the material world, and so they're looking at success and measuring success in a completely different, with a completely different radar. So they're trying to measure, am I failing or succeeding in terms of like some material stability or something. And now there's a soul knowing, or a soul reaching, because they're feeling like, am I on the right track? Because whilst everything else decays and all the material world seem like is nothing, because we've really exhausted that for humanity, and we've especially in these Western worlds, like we've exhausted it until we've got all these resources and all this everything, and then we're still not satisfied. And now there's this, am I on the right path? Because they know where their soul's leading them is to experience more of that love. And all it takes when they come into um, a session, like an experience with us, is to give them that taste. And then, like you said, instead of feeling like they're on the wrong path or failure, all of a sudden the context has changed. And now they're like, oh my God, I'm like a child. And in this wonderland of, I have never used all my gifts, and my paradigm has shifted. So now I'm so excited about what I can use these gifts with. And I think the same as the nuclear family, like there's the side of where the conspiracy side of things, where we can always look at, or the government's trying to put a direct attack on families, and destabilize families. And we can look at it like a victim thing, or we can look at it like, in the past, the nuclear family provided support because humanity was still in a place where we were sort of very conditional with our love. So we could only extend our love to our offspring that were directly genetically ours. And we couldn't love another child in a clan, like a big collective family. And that's broken down. And there's a really beautiful side of that breaking down, because we can start to love and see the beauty in children that are not ours and love them the same. And it's just, and that's happening. And we can see it as something that was an attack on the family, or we look at it as like, no, we collectively chose to experience this to open up our perception more and more. And I think leading into
Yes.
2027, yes.
And by no means, no, I just wanted to add to that because by no means does it feel like it will be a complete shift to a non-nuclear family. For me, I envision these beautiful nuclear families within a larger context of community so that there's help and support. But and like you said, with this destabilizing of the family, like as soon as you said that, immediately I went to, sadly, it feels like in an instant it's gone beyond a destabilizing of the family and straight to a destabilization of the very fabric of humanity, right? On even on the individual level. So if that's what's happening, then there's no possibility for a community, because a community of what? These this idea of where has the heart gone? Without the heart, we have no person or family or community. So the hope is that we can build these larger heart-based families and communities before there is a complete destabilization of the very notion of humanity. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to interject that, my little 2 cents on that. Yes, please go on.
Um, yeah, no, I was just looking at like, because the nodal, like the collective node, because the nodes stay in the sign, the polarity sign for an 18-month period, this year and half of next year, we'll still have the nodes from Virgo South Node to Pisces North Node. And then the end of 2026 and the beginning of 20, like the 2027 shift, we're going to have we'll have it at Leo South Node Aquarius, as the North Node, as the nodes are not a planetary body and they're the point on the interceptor point on the ecliptic. So the nodes are shifting back against the backdrop. So we go sort of backwards. And but I was thinking, this year, I always said, I did a podcast with someone at the end of last year, and they were like asking about this year. And this year has got so, because it's North Node is Pisces, that's where we open up the quantum, but it means that the healing and the purification can happen on all dimensions. By the time in astrology, when we're at that 12th house point, which is like we are now at the Pisces North Node point, the 12th house sort of like is all like the area of healing that's happening and the purification that's happening is in so many dimensions. Um, and so I feel like, yeah, this purification is huge, and we will get to, I have to look up the exact point, but say it's like May next year, May 2026, say it's around then, the nodes will be still Virgo Pisces, but they would have moved back to that 55th gene key as the North Node. So we're going to have a mass point in the last half of 2026, leading us to 2027, when the nodes will move to Aquarius, like Leo Aquarius. But before that, in the middle of next year, we're going to have the nodes at the 55th gene key as the North Node. So we're going to have this opportunity to really collectively make sure a lot of that victim um, purification has been um, purified. And like you said, I think it'll happen out of exhaustion and surrender, because with the Virgo South Node, we've had a lot of people be sick this year. Like I went down to this other studio that I haven't been to. I used to teach at this studio like 11 years ago, and I've been going the last 2 Fridays with my friend Mel. And the teachers apparently have all been sick, like some of them for 3 months. And it's like we've seen a lot of sickness this year as well. And which the healing comes, the Virgo needs that purification, because like we know, the sacred priestesses and the Vestal priestess have that access of the Virgo to the Pisces, and at the Virgo state they've made like a prayer that they will vow to be, connected to the divine, or married to God, or married to the divine. But in order to reach that or hold that frequency, they need to have done all of the purification in the healing aspect of Virgo. And that's what we have happening on a collective level now. We've got purification that needs to happen at all levels, to be able to receive that.
I find it fascinating that we've just left the age of Pisces and then we're in this new opportunity to truly revisit. Is there something that we haven't quite quite completed yet within that age? Because these transition points are very confusing, and with people at different levels of consciousness within the collective, it almost feels like we've been cosmically given another chance to undergo this purification thanks to these nodes, and to continue to be aware of that Pisces North Node goal of this merging and union, which will be such an interesting shift from that kind of, I see it as this divine heart anchored awareness of oneness into the oneness that is of that higher mind, Aquarius, community based thinking. So that's a really interesting. I didn't really think of that before, like this coming back to the Virgo Pisces on that tail end of the age of Pisces. This is
Yeah,
interesting.
and I think because when we were in the age of Pisces, we still had, so even though we had the age of Pisces, because we were still more in the ignorant yuga, we also had that Capricorn consensus, the element of the Capricorn consensus control. So organized religion was still dominating. So we would play victim more to if we were not right by God in terms of what organized religion was telling us. And now it's going to come more at the Aquarian point. Now we've got this opportunity to go, if we're free on our own and we're experiencing suffering, um, based on a new perception of reality, and we get exhausted because we don't know we get exhausted because we keep experiencing a victim state through our suffering. Then we have to sort of dig deep on our own and go, how do I find that level of freedom and purification without being told from a church that this is God and this is what you need to do? How do I find that on my own? And that comes through, I think, a lot of people going through some big things and some suffering, and then finding their own freedom within the truth of who they are. rather than
Yeah, and like
old.
we were saying, it's like it feels there's a readiness for it. And we were talking about how people seem to be so quickly tuning into their gifts. And I wanted to add to that because I think that this is something that we both find also in our work with even astrology, but also the past life regression and Akashic records readings, Reiki too, of course. It's always it feels very helpful to be exploring the past or other lives where there's resonance with today's challenges, because even that helps relieve the burden of this is something I've done wrong in this lifetime, or it's a situation I can't get out of, because we're shifting it to this is a pattern that has been recurring for a reason, and that's already wonderful and so healing. But then I find increasingly so, it becomes less of the journey of these wounded, lives that are resonant to today's situation, and an exploration of the lifetimes in which there were so many gifts. And sometimes those gifts are couched within lifetimes of challenge, and just like they are in this lifetime. But quite often I'm given, information and guidance specifically about lives where, whether it was on this planet or in other civilizations within this planet or off planet, where there were simply these gifts that were anchored in the beings so that they can return or be remembered, not return because they've always been there, but so that they can be revived at exactly the time that's needed. And based on how many of these gifts are being uncovered, I mean, I'm blown away on a day-to-day basis by like, oh wow, we've been able to do that all along. Then it feels like this is the time. And I feel like, when you watch a lot of spiritual podcasts or whatever it is, that there's always this feeling of, even in the whatever the names of the podcast, like today's the day of the biggest day of your life or the biggest shift. And there can be a tendency to overplay like the momentousness of each single like eclipse or full moon or whatever it is, although it's all important. But it does overall feel like there is a feeling of anticipation that we are in a time where it doesn't feel frivolous to be exploring how we can free ourselves of the burdens and the feeling of victimhood, and how we can explore the freedom that is just literally waiting for us to dive right in. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like even I was thinking with the modality of crystal dreaming that I do, and the creator of that modality, um, Rayam Richards, like because he's been doing it for 40 years since he birthed that modality. Like the past life regressions, normally the old model would be like take a person back through 3 lifetimes where there's still unresolved trauma and karma. And then towards the end of the session, which is like a 2 or sometimes a 3 hour session, towards the end, bring in their family and get them to commune with their higher selves and and surround them with the beings of light around them and get them to experience that. And that would be sort of the end, you know. And now, a couple of years ago, he birthed this new modality, and now he gets so excited because it's take the person immediately to connect to their higher self and then their I am presence. And then after they've experienced that, they can go back if there's any leftover residue of contracts that need to be healed from another incarnation. They can do it afterwards. But by the time they've experienced their high, like communed with their higher self, and then experienced their I am presence in the oneness, they don't even care about their little traumas from another life anymore. It seems irrelevant because they've already seen themselves in the oneness. So then they're like, oh yeah, I did. That's like what I agreed to heal. But it doesn't seem as overwhelmingly like a victim state, because it's like, oh, this is who I am. And I was very well equipped to deal with that problem that seemed so massive, but it's not.
Yes, and this reminds me of one thing I also wanted to just mention from the book, but also just from our experiences. It is literally the light is the foundation. Dark always exists. There's always a counterpoint. This is the nature of experience and of anything that happens from the genesis of source. There's always this light, this dance of the light and the dark. The light is always the light is what gave birth to all of it. And so when we are looking to healing, exactly what you said, we can fixate on all the problems that need to be solved. And that has its value, especially if it's done from a place of love and from the highest frequencies, of course. But there's this momentum towards why don't we go into the light first, and why don't we see what's there in the perfection of our souls? And from that ground, it becomes so much more manageable and almost exciting to see, oh, so what passion plays of my life have I been involved in that aren't really serving me anymore? And it just doesn't feel as serious. And you can start to not play. We take all of these lifetimes seriously, and we very respectively, release what no longer serves. But it becomes an active and happy engagement with this opportunity we've had to be alive. And being alive would be quite boring if we're all just sitting in our joy. I mean, believe me, I wish at this moment I can just sit in bliss and Jivamukti all day long. but but until then, it's kind of fun to see, like, oh my gosh, like I thought I was at this stage, and now something's coming along to humble me again, and this is why we're here. And then once we're in another realm, we can kind of sit back and laugh about the whole thing and probably beg to do it all over again. So let's just try to enjoy it while we're here. And I'm making light of it, but we why not choose to, if we're not avoiding the darkness, but it's like, why not choose as the filter the light and the joy, and then through it, let's see what we can heal and dive into those shadows and the coal mine. if that
Yeah.
if that makes sense. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Let's try. Is it okay? So you were talking before about the angelic frequency and how it's almost like it doesn't have any attachments, right? So it's like, and I channel some angels, and they don't have, at least I haven't asked even, but it's like there's no name and there's no personality. It's just this group. And before we came onto this call, I asked if there was a message for you, and I got one. Is it okay if I read it?
Yes, please.
Okay. So hold on. So this is from the angels. Um, Dear Shae, there has never been a time in the entire story of your existence that you did not sparkle with the brightness of the stars in the cosmic sea. Okay, now I'm going to start crying just to say. If you look up at the stars tonight or on any night, you will find some stars that are almost blinding, while others flicker and appear to fade out of sight. In between all of the variations of light, all emanations from a time in existence in which you were dancing between stars, creating the lives and resonances that were whispering their secrets into the ether so that you may find them today, especially during those times when you wonder where the light has gone. Your light is in each one of those stars, which are glowing within you, as they were created with you in their heart's knowing and built upon your most sincere desire for the light to be with us wherever and whenever we are, always. You are a true carrier of light, and you need look no further than the expanse of your heart, which heaves with grief for the suffering and widens with joy when you know that the starlight is shining in someone's hopeful and happy eyes. You are a connector of stars, the breath between them, the arena of your movements in grace. Remember during times when the starlight is obscured from you, that it was never created and will never be eradicated from our field of living. They are your own footprints etched in the cosmic sea, and you will find yourself gleaning from their wisdom, from your own contributions to that wisdom beyond knowing, as your children awaken to the light you have woven into the path of their lineage, and as you settle into a soft seat of rest. For the stars do not need to be chased, only to be held as they come awake within you. You are so loved.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
I just got chills all over, especially when they said about your children and the lineage that you're creating for them in light.
Oh, that's so special. Thank you.
But when you just tune into this frequency of love wherever it's coming from, and it doesn't matter. And we get, and we all, every single one of us gets to feel that, gets to do whatever it takes to feel that. And the words are the words, and the message will always be right for the person who's receiving it. But it's that we have to be so vigilant in protecting this heart space that is clearly the gift of why we're here in this lifetime. So
Oh, absolutely. How long did that take you? How long does that take you to?
it literally just flows. Like it's like how I write my poems in the morning. Like I tune in, I pray, I ask specifically, like I just tuned into the frequency and I asked if there was a message for you, and then I just type. I mean, and I'm not in a trance. Like I'm aware of what's coming through, just like when I'm talking during an Akashic Records reading, translating the guides. But it took as long as it took me to read it to you, just about.
Yeah, I wondered that. I wanted to ask that question too, just because I know that as we're doing this, like prayers, and as we're doing this service, things just it is, if you're so connected to the knowing of that, it actually starts to become quite fast because um yeah, like I was even thinking, like when I take people through the journeys and soul journeys and past life regressions, a lot of people, like I'm very visual, and in my clairs, whatever the clair is that's very visual, and I see almost like a movie when I'm taking someone to a journey and their past lives. And but I know that for a lot of people, and no clair is better than any other. In fact, a lot of people I've found are more the feeling, and the feeling takes longer than the visual. It's definitely a longer, like takes longer to for them to feel it in their body. Um, but I have to give them that space sometimes because I see it so quickly. If I get excited and then try to give it to them and they haven't journeyed there to feel it, it doesn't become as real for them. But I also thought, I don't know if it's just that the visual is faster, but it's just more that if when we're using these gifts each day and we're praying each day, it actually it's quick. It's not like you have to plan anything. It's just very fast, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You tune in with the right intention. And of course it takes practice, as it did for me and for all of us. Um, and yeah, like you said, for me also, I'm very visual. So I didn't even realize, because I'm a writer, that a lot of the writing is channeling. Not all of it. Like this book wasn't channeled, but when I write poems every day, I didn't really realize it was channeling. But people would also ask me, "Oh, how long did it take you to craft this thing?" And it's like I just write it, and like I literally write it on the Facebook page. Like I'm not even, and I just do it. And it's channeling. And so that's different than the clairs. I don't even know if channeling is a clair, but not really. It's not, I guess. I don't even know where you would put that in. But it's true. So it's like when we were both learning Reiki, for me, it was visual for sure to come in first. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and it would be just like an image, and then slowly it became kind of the movies, and then it becomes the movies, and like you said, but with the feeling and the knowing and the lesson and the connections to the car, so it just kind of flows. And I'm just convinced that it's accelerating to the degree that it is, because it is so needed now, and because the people we're working with are so receptive and exhausted and ready to be on that journey, because we couldn't do it without that shared field that we're in when we're doing this work. Does that make sense?
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, it is so lovely having this guy. I feel like we can talk about anything and everything for.
I know. I know we have to do this again soon because we
Yeah.
tried to stick for people listening to make it not so long. We wanted to stick to the hour, which we've pretty much reached now, so or have reached now. So we will um leave it there. But I know that I'll will we keep it now that we've remembered that we can actually do this, Tammy, together.
We have Zoom and we have the ether and we can do this.
We'll be doing this a lot more often, and we can this has flowed so easily to the point I know we could just talk about everything and anything and it would just go on, and that's great. Um,
Yes, and at the same time, I love that we brought it kind of, I feel in a way we had this thread of freedom throughout, and this journey that we're all on right now towards freedom and all of the ways it means. So I love that we kind of had that as the theme word for today.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Like truly, truly thank you for, and thank your dad for giving you that little nudge to do a podcast and for bringing together just so much soul and so much beauty. Anything, I mean, you are such an emanation of love in this world. So I'm so excited to see all of the podcasts you're going to be doing as part of this series. And thank you so much for the gift of having me here today.
Oh, thank you. I know I do have to thank Dad also because I think that's one of the lessons too, like in his human form. I mean, he adored me, but he definitely didn't understand this side of me properly, and he always said he knew when I was a little girl that I was like this, but he didn't understand it. And I think I've had a few medium readings now where Dad's come through since he's passed, and each time they're like, he's so proud of you, the work that you do, and he's trying really hard up there to like understand and getting excited for that now. So I think he's pushing like that, go and do this, Shae, because he's believing in it. And you feel that like when you lose someone in your family that um and you really know, like if I tune into Dad, I know he believes in me doing this, like so that yeah, it's not something that I'm just half thinking he might. I actually really do know that. So yeah.
Yeah, it was very specific guidance, and you could just feel the love behind it. Like your dad may never have even listened to a podcast, right? I don't know if he did
No,
or not. Probably not, right?
he didn't know what his email was or anything. He pretty much retired from school teaching when the internet was what they had to
Right?
start using because he was so freaked out about that.
Yeah. And here we are with Jivamukti. So life works in mysterious and magical ways.
Yeah.
So we will do this again for sure,
Thank-
I hope.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. And until next time.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thank
So
you.
much
Love
love.
you. Bye.